Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm a current junior studying here at George School. As an international student, I didn't get a chance to do a campus tour. I applied online in 2022 during the COVID pandemic. Everything about George School was based on its information, data, statistics, that sort. And I remember 10 p.m. that night and my George School interview starts in 5 minutes. I could shamefully say I forgot to set my alarm clock. I overslept and I didn't prepare for the interview as much as I want to. So I gathered all the information I did in previous research and I opened the George School website in 2 minutes, and the first thing that popped out for me was service trip. There was a news article on there talking about GS service trips. So when the interviewer asked me, "Why do you want to come to George School?" the first thing that popped into my mind, I answered, service trips. I want to come to George School because I want to be on a service trip and I want to contribute to a service trip. And in addition, there's many other things that I talked about. But I could gladly say it got me here, so I could put that in the past right now. But I didn't really think about service trips later that day either. As I continue my journey here at George School, I joined the Curious George, and it's an article I have to work on called GS Archives. This time, I'm determined to do my research, so I scheduled a meeting with Dave, the archivist, 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning before meeting for worship to do my research in the George School archives. I should shamefully say again, I forgot to set my alarm clock this time again. So I was running down South Lawn, full speed, grabbing my coat behind me, and saw Dave waiting for me in the MDA library. He took me in and he started talking about the history of George School, how the archive is founded, how the school is founded, and all the additional stuff. And he stopped when he talked about word trips. I wasn't sure what word trips are at that time, and he explained to me it was service trips. They were originally called word trips because due to reconstruction efforts that the George School students put in earlier in the year, so they just categorized it as word trips. I left the archives that day having the word in my mind, word trips. And later on, I scheduled another meeting with Dave to know more about it. This time, he led me to a different room in the basement of the meeting house, a very old door that stood in the corner, and he opened it. The floors were really squeaky, and there were like spider webs in the corners everywhere. It was quite creepy, I should say. And he pulled out 2 drawers, very heavily dusted, and he said, "You want to know about service trips? It's all in there." So I spent that day looking through the documents, the books, the files, and I saw this little tin box in the corner. It was vibrant blue, and I took it out and I placed it on the table. I dusted it off and I opened it, and this is what I saw. Photographs, films, in a more correct term, negatives. As an avid photographer, this really excites me. These are film negatives back in 1950s and the 1960s. I hold up each one of them delicately and I hold them to the light so I could see the light flowing through the images to see them more clearly. And in those images, I saw students, teachers. I saw the savanna grasslands and the animals. I saw students' laughter and them sitting in a circle and laughing. I saw the joy that was depicted in the images, and I somehow feel connected to them. Because in those images are George School students 70 years ago on a service trip, and I imagine that they might have lived on the same dorms as I did, studying in the same classrooms, and in a way, I felt connected so much to those images. As I continue to talk about the service trips, I'm going to give a bit of a historical context to prove that I really done my research. The first GS service trip started in 1947, a bold transatlantic journey to Germany to help restore the ruins of the war. 7 GS students spent 3 years on a mission to help reconstruct the Jacobi Gymnasium in Dusseldorf. And the former archivist of the school, Mr. Kingdon Swain, noted in his very thick book called History of George School, I really truly recommend that book. It's quite a standard read. And in there, he wrote the specific quote, "This service trip is an effort to restore what the world has destroyed." So I looked through the documents from the early service trips of the GS students in Dusseldorf, and I saw documents, recounts and journals of their activities. I saw things as detailed as morning routines, the conversations that they took, conversations that they had about friendship, about love, about entertainment, movies, music, conversations about the world. And it just struck me that I couldn't figure out which words and documents are from the GS students and which one are from the Dusseldorf students back then. In those documents, in those conversations, they became one, and they formed a community of their own. And in 1948, the Dusseldorf school published something called the Die Brücke. In English, it means the bridge. It's a book that talks about the GS connections and the students that went on those trips and the things that they done. The bridge doesn't only symbolize the action of taking an overseas journey to help reconstruct a school and build a community. The bridge also symbolizes the reaching out of the hands, the embracement of a different culture and breaking down barriers, forming a community just as teenagers. Then in 1957, GS students went on their first reconstruction trips to Africa. They helped reconstruct a multi-purpose dining hall in St. Andrew's College. And that tradition kind of went on throughout the years. In the 1960s and 1970s, George School became the first American boarding school to visit Vietnam after the Vietnam War, and the first American boarding school to visit Cuba after the Revolution. And they established connections with the Quaker community back then that lasted until the 1990s. Later on, in the 1990s, under the leadership of Clark Moore, the head of the history department, George School students expanded their trips to be in Japan, India, China, so many different countries around the world. The GS service trips not only embodies the GS SPICES, simplicity, peace, integrity, community, and stewardship. They also are a visionary statement that shows global connections, justice, and collaboration. The GS students that went on those trips 70 years ago established a connection and a tradition that lasted throughout the years. Even until this day, every year, we're offered so many service trips around the world to explore new places and learn new things and carry out our Quaker values in helping others. We still carry on the same compassion and action that was defined by our predecessors so many years ago. I'm actually going on my first service trip in June this year to Poland and to study about Holocaust history. It was so meaningful to me, and it's something that I'm really excited about. And I kind of want to end on a note with a quote that Kingdon Swain has put in his book, a quote by Walter Moore that talks about his prospects and his ambition for the GS service trip programs. He said, "We cannot change what the old generations have done, but the idealism of youth is the greatest things in the world. We can carry on this idealism, and we can help contribute to the world, and we can help encompass the values that we took to make changes and to hopefully create a future with this program affecting everyone around the world. Because service is not just an act, it's a way of life here." Thank you.